Welcome to today's CPE meeting on Professional Misconduct, Do's and Don'ts and ICAI Code of Ethics 2019. The session will be handled by renowned speaker CAS Ganapathy sir. May I now request sir to come and occupy the dais. We will start the program with the ICAI motto song. Thank you, delegates. CAS Ganapathy, a commerce graduate, a cost and works accountant, fellow chartered accountant in full-time practice since 1986. He is a life member of a Society of Auditors. He is very passionate about teaching. He is having more than 29 years of experience in teaching. He is a faculty member of audit subject with SIRC of ICAI and its branches at Madurai, Tirupur, Kanchipuram, etc. Sir is also a visiting faculty on the subject auditing with various leading institutions including Regional Training Institute of Accountant General Office, Chennai. With this brief, I introduce sir to the August gathering. Before I hand over the proceedings, may I now request Vasudevan sir to come and present a memento to our faculty today. The agenda for today, sir will take us through what is professional misconduct in relation to members in general, members in practice, members in service, and he will also cover a revised code of ethics of ICAI 2019. Over to sir, Ganapathy sir.
Good evening. I am so happy to see so many people interested in professional ethics. That's a subject which is very close to my heart. And all along I have been teaching professional ethics. And it's an opportunity for me to share with you the developments in this area. Now, before I do that, I'm not sure how many of us still remember what we studied. Just a small introduction into the subject. Now, professional misconduct is governed by Section 22 of the Chartered Accountants Act. And what is important is it includes not only acts of misconduct, even omissions of misconduct. Not only acts can constitute misconduct, even omission to act in certain circumstances can constitute professional misconduct. And disciplinary action will be invited if a member is found to be guilty on inquiry. Till then he is deemed to be guilty. Till then he is deemed to be guilty. On inquiry, if he is found to be guilty, disciplinary mechanism will start. Next, the definition of professional misconduct under section 22 is comprehensive enough to cover not only professional misconduct but also other misconduct. I think we have to be clear on this, that what does not constitute professional misconduct, if it is a misconduct and if it doesn't fall within the scope of professional misconduct, I think it should fall under other misconduct. If, in the opinion of the council, it does constitute other misconduct. So, there is no misconduct which escapes from the schedules to the Act. There are only two schedules to the CA Act, the first schedule and the second schedule. And these are the two schedules which are referred to as the Code of Ethics. The schedules to the CA Act is known as the Code of Ethics. And you will be able to see there, professional ethics is covered by part 1, 2 and 3 of first schedule and part 1 and 2 of second schedule. Which means part 4 of first schedule and part 3 of second schedule will constitute other misconduct. Now I think this distinction is very important. And whenever we deal with ethical issues, we have to be clear about one thing. We have to give a liberal interpretation to the provision. We cannot narrow it down to saying that if this clause does not apply, it is not a misconduct. No. I think courts have always been very liberal in interpretation. In fact, in many of the judgments in high courts, they have never interfered into the council's jurisdiction at all. The powers of the council under the Chartered Accountants Act has not been questioned at all, for the reason that it comes under the regulatory mechanism. But the council also has been very serious enough to take steps wherever the necessary, the case has been referred to the High Court, particularly when the interests of the third parties are involved. Because the council's orders are binding only on the members. If in any case interest of the third party is involved, the council has always referred the case to High Court. And the High Court has taken the matter and issued orders. I think this is a very important point. Shows clearly that the council has never decided on its own. The matters have gone to High Court. It is only the High Courts which have decided. If the High Court has decided and passed orders, I think it should be fair enough to say that the council has done its duty by referring the case to the High Court. Anyway, I leave it to you to decide on what that means. Next, we move on to professional misconduct in members in general. This is something which I have always been serious about. Pay your membership fees on time. Otherwise, unnecessarily, unpleasant disciplinary action is taken under section 20 of the CA Act. A lot of time is given to pay the membership fees. I don't know, some members haven't been serious about that. So please ensure that you do pay the fees on time and don't invite any action under section 20. Do not use any designation as a member. Do not use any other designation. I think the word other is very important. Do not use any other designation along with chartered accountant. The designation chartered accountant should be used exclusively. A combination of designations is never permitted even under statutes of other professional bodies also. Not only the CA Act, the CMA Act, CS Act, Advocates Act, in every statute governing professional bodies, you will find this condition that their designation should be used exclusively and should not be combined with other designations. We do find in some cases designations being combined. I don't think that is correct. Next, supply the information called for. Comply with the requirements asked for. This is again an area which is causing a lot of concern. Whenever a letter comes from the institute, I think immediate response is necessary. Otherwise, clause 2, part 3 of first schedule will be attracted. I have given the respective clauses also, so that under which provision these things are being dealt with. So, providing the information called for, complying with the requirements asked for. I think the words called for, asked for is very clear that there is some requirement in the act or regulations which is to be complied with. That is precisely why the information is being called for or the requirements is being asked for. So not complying with this will definitely invite contravention of the act or regulations. Equally, another clause is involved in that. So please ensure that timely compliance, I think it matters a lot when it comes to the institute. Even otherwise, under any law, timely compliance is necessary. Do not contravene any of the provisions of the CA Act. See, these are provisions which are general to all members. This is not only in relation to members in practice. This is applicable to all members. Do not contravene any provisions of the Act or regulations or guidelines issued by the Council. The respective clause has been given there. So I am not teaching you professional ethics. I am just brushing up what all we have done. It is just to go back what we have done. I am sure most of you are, at least I am sure all of you are aware what we are discussing about. So this is not any teaching session. This is only a session to recap what we know and then take it from there to the revised code. The revised code does deal with some of these requirements. When you know this, then you will know what differences have, what are the changes which have taken place. Next, do not include in any information, statement, return or form to be submitted to the Institute, Council or any of its disciplinary authorities any particulars knowing it to be false. Now, knowing them to be false is presumed always. Intention, the law always presumes intention. If any wrong particulars are furnished, there are 3 such instances I can tell you where information being provided is being found to be inconsistent with the information available with the institute as well as with regulatory authorities. In fact, this is something which is very common to empanelment for audits. This is very common for multi-empanelment procedures which we follow. So, particularly members in practice have to be very careful when any information is provided, any particulars, can be very small particulars even, but please ensure that those particulars are consistent with the information available with the institute as well as, because this information once provided is stored and vetted, cross-checked, and some of the cases I think the firms have been refused the empanelment. They have been blacklisted in the empanelment. I am aware of that. In some cases, wrong particulars have landed them. They do not know why the audits have not been allotted. It is one of the reasons is this clause. Information being provided is inconsistent or otherwise unsatisfactory or otherwise wrong. and the particulars furnished are, I think till now no serious action is being contemplated. But see the words which are used here: information, statement, return, form. I don't think anything can escape from this, including articleship forms, including empanelment forms. But these are only within the institute. If the same thing happens outside the institute, it will cross professional misconduct and go into other misconduct. That distinction is very important. As long as the information provided is false within the institute, it comes under professional misconduct. If the information provided to third parties is found to be wrong, false, it will fall under other misconduct. So this is what generally I feel members should be careful about. Now we come to the profession as such, members in practice. Now when it comes to members in practice, there's a lot to be covered. I'm just going to quickly run through do's and don'ts. First, what should be done: pay the COP fees on time to avoid cancellation of COP. Cancellation of COP has very far-reaching consequences. You cannot generate UDIN. You cannot attest. You cannot accept audit assignments. So please ensure 30th September is the last date for payment of the COP fees. Timely compliance will ensure no further complications. Next is a member. A member can be in charge of only one office of a CA firm. I think this is something which all of us are aware. But more important, why? Under section 27 of the Chartered Accountants Act, to practice in India, you should be a resident in India. You cannot reside outside India and practice, because COP cannot be held outside India. COP can be held only in India. So a member can be in charge of only one office of a CA firm, and if you want to be in charge of office of a CA firm, either should be a partner in that firm or should be in full-time employment, or it should be your own proprietary firm. Only in those circumstances you can be in charge, obviously subject to certain exceptions. For members who are practicing in hilly regions, relaxations have been given. For members, they can open a second office. The office can be within the same premises, or within the same town, or within a distance of 50 kilometers from the municipal limits, where the main office is located. So those are the exceptions. I've given the section. I'm sure if you read it, you will be able to find the exceptions. I think the next one, I'm not sure how far compliance is being followed, KYC norms. Now, the council has prescribed KYC norms based on SQC1, Standards on Quality Control. Standards on Quality Control require that an audit firm should establish quality control policies and procedures for acceptance and continuance of client relationships. So, in SQC1, one of the requirements for an audit firm to comply with is to establish quality control policies and procedures for acceptance and continuance of client relationships. So KYC norms is based on that. KYC norms is generally recommendatory but mandatory pertaining to attest function. I'll tell you where the problems we are facing is in peer review. At the time of peer review, there have been many cases where we have found that audit firms are not complying with the KYC norms, even in case of attestation claims. So I'm sure importance should be given to KYC norms, and the KYC details are not that difficult to follow. Next, communication with the previous auditor before accepting the appointment. Communication with the previous auditor before accepting an audit, I think we should not be under the impression that it applies only to audit assignments. Strictly speaking, clause 8, part 1 of first schedule will apply to certification. It will equally apply to even assignments other than audit assignments. Particularly, this clause becomes very important in the case of tax audit assignments. In many cases, we have found that in case of tax audit assignments, we haven't found who is the previous auditor at all. Because in a few years, there have been no audits at all for that business because the turnover has not crossed the limits. I still have a case where in assessment year 2012-13, the audit was last conducted. Since then, for 6-7 years, there is no tax audit at all. In the current year, I am appointed as a tax auditor. Finding the previous auditor itself is a big ordeal, and communicating with him, and then waiting for a reasonable period of time, and the communication has to be only by registered post acknowledgement due. Good thing is that the recent changes to the code is contemplating other forms of communication also. Going by registered post acknowledgement due or by hand delivery with acknowledgement is not enough. I think with technology improving, I'm sure other forms of communication should equally be considered. I think it is being considered now in the revised code. Deposit client's money not into your bank account, into a separate bank account, or to use such monies for the purpose for which they are intended within reasonable time. I think the catch is only that reasonable time. Using client's money, except the money which you receive towards fees, except the money you receive towards expenses, all other monies received from the client should be used for that purpose or should be deposited into a separate bank account. In many cases, I think there is lack of clarity on this point. If you receive the money towards purposes which the client intends, like payment of taxes or stamp duty purposes, legal expenses or other purposes, and subsequently the surplus remains after making all those payments, the surplus has to be returned and cannot be adjusted towards your dues. Only when the money is received towards fees or expenses, it is exempt from clause 10, part 1 of second schedule. If the money is not prima facie received towards fees or expenses, adjustments for fees or expenses is a professional misconduct. Next.
Sir, some questions here.
Now, let me finish off. I'll definitely take this. If you have a question, I just simply request you to please make a note of it so that we can answer all the questions together. Definitely. The flow of the discussion will continue. What should not be done? Members in practice cannot use any designation other than chartered accountant. Not possible at all. They are not permitted to use any other designation. There have been cases which have come to the council where members have appeared before the Debt Recovery Tribunal and other tribunals. In such cases, those tribunals require representatives to use the designation corporate lawyer. But the council has clearly decided no. We cannot use such designations. Members in practice cannot use any designation other than chartered accountant. Members may even be qualified in other professions. They may even carry on activities in other professions. But multiple designations are not permitted in any profession. When a member is holding COP, it is absolutely essential that he has to use only the designation chartered accountant. Now, can I have different visiting cards with different designations for different purposes, provided they are all permitted by the council? One such example is, the council has given a decision that members in practice as a chartered accountant are also permitted to practice as advocates, provided they are otherwise qualified and two, they are members of the Bar Council. Strictly speaking, under the Advocates Act 1956, if you want to become a member of the Bar Council, you have to use only the designation advocate. You cannot use any other designation. If you hold COP as a chartered accountant, you have to use only the designation chartered accountant. You cannot use any other designation. So there is a conflict of designation involved. So membership of the Bar Council cannot be obtained in such cases. What if the member has already obtained the Bar Council membership and thereafter obtains the COP of the institute? Even then, the Bar Council rejects the membership subsequently. So these cases have been brought to the notice of the council. The council is aware. What the council has decided, in case you are practicing both, you can use the designation chartered accountant in one visiting card when you are practicing as a member, and another visiting card when you are practicing as an advocate. It is possible that a member may use both different visiting cards for different purposes, but not together at any point of time. Next, the name board or the nameplate of the firm cannot be displayed at the residence of the member. Now, this is something which is very important. I have myself been a witness observer of in certain cases where the firm's name board is being displayed at the residence of the member. As a partner. Now, is it permitted to have a name board putting as a partner of so-and-so firm at the residence? I don't think that is correct. Because the council's view is very clear. Your individual name board is possible, but you cannot use the name of the firm at your residence. Next. Do not share or accept fees or profits from other persons except with members, partners, members of other professional bodies, persons having prescribed qualifications. All of them are covered in Regulation 53A. And Regulation 53B deals with multidisciplinary partnership, MDP. So if a partnership is permitted, sharing of fees or profits is permitted with such partners. Do not solicit clients or professional work directly or indirectly, except from other chartered accountants in practice or by responding to tenders and inquiries. Now, these are the exceptions under clause 6. There have been many cases where soliciting issues have come. There have been many cases where the council has had opportunity to deal with soliciting, including a case where if an advertisement or a circular or a tender is issued, only where chartered accountants can respond. Unless the tender or the advertisement prescribes the minimum fees, members should not apply. If the tender or advertisement or circular prescribes the minimum fees to be charged, there is no restriction on members to apply. Coaching centers are also permitted to have their name boards, but without any element of publicity or soliciting. As a thumb rule in soliciting, name of the firm should not be disclosed except as permitted by the council. Last, do not charge or accept fees as a percentage or contingent upon findings or results, except as permitted in Regulation 192. 8 exceptions are there in Regulation 192. Liquidator can charge fees as a percentage. The auditor of a cooperative society can charge fees as a percentage. Valuer for tax purposes can charge fees as a percentage, only for tax purposes. Direct taxes and indirect taxes. Management consultancy and other services fees can be charged as a percentage. And of late, latest exceptions have been included. For debt recovery purposes, fees can be charged as a percentage. Fundraising activities, I think that is a scope, that is an area which I think chartered accountants in practice will find it very, very useful. Fundraising activities. A lot of us are involved in mobilizing funds or assisting clients in mobilization of funds through banks, financial institutions, etc. So, NBFCs and so on. Fundraising activities, charging fees as a percentage for fundraising activities now comes under the exception. Cost optimization. I don't know how many chartered accountants are involved in cost optimizations. If they are qualified both as a cost accountant and as a chartered accountant, I'm sure this is an area which can be tapped. Manufacturing industry, there's a lot of industries which require cost optimizations to be done. I'm sure the automobile industry will be seriously interested in doing that. They're going through a very bad phase. If someone can optimize their costs and reduce their cost reduction, cost control measures are implemented so that their margins, at least their loss margins come down. If not, the profit margins go up. I think cost optimization is one area I'm sure we can all seriously think about. Next, we come to, for members in practice, pay stipend to articled assistants in accordance with the CA regulations. Members in practice, I'm sure, are serious about that. I don't think I need to elaborate further on that. If there is anything going wrong with that, I'm sure you will have a immediate reciprocation from the articled assistants. I don't think we are in any way going wrong with that. Do not engage in other business or occupation except as permitted by the council under the regulations. We have been permitted to become ordinary directors. Many activities have been permitted generally. Certain activities require specific permission, prior permission. So all those, they come under the CA regulations 191 and 198. Now all these things, I am coming to the revised code. I am slowly taking you from here. Now all these things are necessary for you to go through once, so that when you come to the code, you will understand, yes, earlier it was this, now it is this. Next, do not disclose information to clients, to third parties, except when required by law or with the consent of the client. Maintain proper books of account, including cash book and ledgers. Do not attest a forecast. I think this is where I think we have to be clear about one thing. Attesting a forecast as true and correct is what is prohibited. Affixing the seal and signature is not attestation. Attestation is when you sign and put your seal, put your membership number, a firm registration number, and issue a report certifying the forecast as true and correct. That is attestation. Merely affixing your seal and sign on a forecast, I think you should clearly mention prepared by us, but not, I think you should never attest it as true and correct. Prepared by us, there is nothing wrong. Even the standards on auditing standards, SAE 3400 do permit chartered accountants to prepare forecasts and report on such preparation. There is nothing wrong with that. If bank managers insist that you should put your seal and sign, don't hesitate. but ensure that you put the seal prepared by us and not attested by us. Prepared, there is nothing wrong in you preparing a forecast. So to that extent, we should be clear that we are not doing anything wrong by just putting our seal and signature. But one more thing which has to be done is, I think you should put the seal prepared by us and just don't leave it there. Don't put the seal and sign and leave it there. Put clearly prepared by us, nothing wrong. In fact, in document drafting, in all the sub-registrar office, they insist that an advocate should sign at the last page, drafted by us, drafted by me. Without that, the sub-registrar will not take the document for registration. So, prepared by us, nothing wrong. Even SAE 3400 will support you on that. Next, do not accept an audit if substantial interest is held, either by you or by your partner or your relatives together or individually. Substantial interest should not be held. This clause prima facie deals with the independence of auditors. I am sure you are all aware that there are enough disqualifications even in the Companies Act to take care of independence. If those disqualifications are not sufficient, Clause 4, Part 1 of second schedule will take care of the rest. If any situation arises where there is no express statutory disqualification for an audit to be accepted, Clause 4 will apply. Next, do not accept tax audit assignments under Section 44AB in excess of 60 assignments in a financial year, excluding presumptive tax cases. I think it's very important for you to know, or I am sure you are aware already, that those cases which fall under 44AD, 44AE, presumptive cases, there are other presumptive cases also, BB, BBA and so on. And if the assessee does not declare the income to be declared under those sections, audit of accounts of the assessee becomes mandatory under 44AB. So, if by virtue of presumptive tax cases, if audit under section 44AB becomes mandatory, those cases need not be included in the sealing of 60 assignments. Next, do not accept an audit if undisputed audit fees of another chartered accountant is outstanding, except in the case of SIC units having negative net worth. That's the only exception which is permitted under Council General Guidelines. So these are the areas which members in practice have to take care. Next one, do not accept audit of companies and branches of companies in excess of the specified number. There is a corresponding sealing in the Code of Ethics also. In the Companies Act also there is a sealing on audit of companies. 20 companies under section 141 subsection 3 clause G of the Companies Act. There is a sealing of 20 companies excluding audit of one-person companies, small companies, dormant companies, private companies, subject to certain conditions of paid-up capital and so on. But correspondingly in the Code of Ethics also, there is a sealing. The prescribed number is 30 audit assignments, 30 audit assignments, both for companies and branches of companies. Now, as an auditor, you are supposed to comply with both Chapter 8 of Council General Guidelines as well as Section 141 subsection 3 of the Companies Act. It is a duty of the member in practice to comply with both simultaneously, not one of the two, both, cumulatively. Next, do not accept an audit when indebted to the client for a sum exceeding rupees as prescribed in the statute or a sum of 10,000. You should be happy to know that the revised code is taking this limit up. What is the revised limit? We'll come to that. 10,000 was too long. When I qualified in January 1986 and started in February 86, it was 1,000 rupees. And after many years it became 10. And now only the limit is getting revised. Imagine from where we have come from 1,000 to 10,000 to now 1 lakh. That's the present revised limit which is being considered. Next, we are coming to members in service. Members in service, what should be done? I think the Code of Ethics has not much about it at all. What should not be done is more for members who are in employment. Do not share with third persons emoluments of your employment. Why is this provision there? I think often when we search for jobs, there is a provision in the manpower recruitment job portals that you have to pay a certain number of months of your salary as commission or service charges. Accepting such agreements is professional misconduct under clause 1, part 2 of first schedule. So please remember, members who are going for employment should not enter into such agreements. Paying lump sum amount is fine, but the fees to be paid to the recruitment agencies should no way be connected with the emoluments of your employment. Next, do not accept any share of fees or profits or as commission or gratification from a lawyer or a chartered accountant or a broker who is engaged by the employer or an agent or customer of the employer. Now this is quite common with members in service because they do occupy positions of finance or taxation and they do come in contact with, and whenever an employer requires engaging other professionals, I think members in service do assist them on that. They do introduce other professionals, but we are not sure, do they have an understanding with other professionals to secure a commission or a gratification? That is not permitted because it is unethical, because it is being done without the knowledge of the employer. But if it is being done with the knowledge of the employer and with the consent of the employer or as a part of the terms of employment, if referral fees is paid, this clause will not be attacked. If an employee chartered account, nowadays there is a provision in certain cases, you will find members when they are being employed, as a part of their terms of employment itself, referral fees is being paid if they do introduce other professionals. Next, do not disclose confidential information except when required by law or when with the consent of the employer. So the employer himself will classify certain information as confidential. Please ensure that you don't disclose them. Next, we are coming to the revised code. Now the revised code of ethics, I think there is a lot of deliberation which went through. Many amendments in the recent has happened to Companies Act, to accounting standards, to auditing standards, introduction of Ind AS, and many amendments have taken place in the banking industry, insurance industry. Considering all that, I think there was a need to revise the Code of Ethics. Part A of this is only Part B. Part A of the Code of Ethics was aligned with the International Ethical Standards Board Code. So that was done earlier. Now Part B is getting revised. The revised code is coming to effect from 1st April 2020. What are the provisions of the revised code? Broadly, the changes in the code. Now, two separate publications are coming, Volume 1, Volume 2. Volume 1 will cover Part A, Volume 2 will cover Part B. Section 2 and Section 25 of the Chartered Accountants Act is getting amended. Section 2 deals with practice. Section 2 of the Chartered Accountants Act deals with members deemed to be in practice. Now, what is being enlarged is the scope of management, consultancy and other services. Under Section 2, subsection 2, clause 4 of the CA Act, the scope of management, consultancy and other services is getting enlarged, and the scope of practice also is being extended. More commentary and more examples, illustrations are being provided for members to understand what can be the extended scope of practice. Section 25 of the Chartered Accountants Act deals with there is a prohibition for companies to practice as chartered accountants. Members cannot practice in the name of companies. Members can only practice either individually or as a sole proprietor or as a partner in a firm or LLP. But corporate form of practice is being introduced for the first time, with obviously a very small scope of corporate form of practice is being introduced, not to the extent what we would like to see the corporate form of practice. So members can definitely take a practice in the corporate form, obviously with restrictions. Next, all the provisions are being numbered, renumbered to be precise, with chapter numbers. So the revised code, part B of the Code of Ethics, will not have paragraph numbers, they will have chapter numbers. They won't have clause numbers, part numbers, they will have chapter numbers under this schedule. Next, changes due to revised requirements of Part A of the Code of Ethics, especially commentary is being provided. I told you, more and more commentary is being provided, illustrations, examples are being provided in Section 2, subsection 2, members deemed to be in practice. And in clauses 8, part 1 of first schedule. Clause 8, part 1 of first schedule is what we discussed as communication with the previous auditor. Now the communication with the previous auditor is now, as I told you, more and more methods of communication is being introduced. Not just registered post acknowledgement due or by hand delivery. There is the proposed code of thing is going to extend the form of communication using technology as an evidence. I am sure digital signature evidences will be enough for communication. So that is what is being contemplated. Next, clause 1, part 1 of second schedule, which is nothing but confidentiality. Clause 1, part 1 of second schedule deals with any breach of confidentiality. I think time has come for us to understand that information is required for various purposes. You cannot stop members in practice from disclosing information when it is absolutely essential in the interest of the client. It may not always be required by law. It may not always be with the express consent of the client. But I think disclosure of information about the client may be required for various regulatory purposes and other purposes. To what extent this confidentiality is going to be relaxed, I think we have got to go into the detailed code, which is there on the Institute website. The Institute website, we do not have all the time to go in detail into the revised code, but the amendment which is happening is more and more forms of, disclosure, more scope is being given for confidentiality relaxation. Next, changes due to new Companies Act, particularly in clause 9. Clause 9, part 1 of first schedule to the Companies Act lot of amendments have been going through the Companies Act. Corresponding changes are required. In sections 139, very small thing like, for example, you find that even filing of Form ADT1 is not required every year. And another very important change which took place was in every AGM, the appointment need not be reconfirmed, need not be ratified. Ratification was necessary prior to 2017. In the 2016-2017 amendment, ratification was dispensed with. Similarly, a lot of changes are happening to the sealing provisions. A lot of changes are happening to even acceptance of audits. A lot of changes are happening to rotation. A lot of changes are happening to recommendation by audit committee. So all these changes in the Companies Act will have an impact on clause 9. In clause 9, what is clause 9? Before accepting audit of a company, it is the duty of the incoming auditor to ascertain whether the company has complied with the requirements of the relevant provisions of the Companies Act. The relevant provisions of the Companies Act being sections 139, 140, 141, 142 and so on. So correspondingly, wherever changes have been happening, I think the code also needs to be revised. In fact, in the present Code of Ethics, there is a note at the end of the Code of Ethics that due to revision in the Code of Ethics, due to changes in Companies Act, the revised Code of Ethics will come into effect. So you have to read as per the revised code only. So this lot of changes are happening in clause 9. Next, revised auditing and accounting standards, corresponding changes in chapter 1 of the Code of Ethics, particularly under certain clauses. Clause 8, communication with the previous auditor. Now, communication with the previous auditor will undergo a few changes because of changes in auditing standards. Clause 2, part 1 of second schedule. So wherever the requirements are changing with auditing standards and accounting standards, correspondingly, any contravention of those standards will attract professional misconduct. Any contravention of auditing standards, accounting standards, there are provisions in the Code of Ethics where if a member fails to disclose material facts, fails to report material misstatements, if a member is grossly negligent in professional duties, they're all covered in clauses 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9 in part 1 of second schedule. So clauses 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9, part 1 of second schedule deals with reporting failures. Those reporting failures have a very close connection with accounting standards and auditing standards. What is contemplated, what is understood as in professional terminology as gross negligence. So any non-compliance with auditing standards and accounting standards will be viewed as gross negligence, will attract clause 1, part 2 of second schedule. Part 1 of second schedule also, confidentiality is also involved. See, why confidentiality is being involved? Because website guidelines and other guidelines, wherever information is being stored, information is now being stored in electronic form. SA 230, which deals with audit documentation, SA 500, which deals with audit evidence, now permits audit evidence to be retained in electronic form. Documentation can be retained in electronic form. So therefore, you will find that confidentiality issues will be involved. Even in the Companies Act, you have studied the Companies Accounts Rules, Rule 3 and Rule 5 of Companies Accounts Rules 2014 do deal with the rules regarding maintaining books of account in electronic form. Therefore, wherever electronic form technology is involved, confidentiality issues will be involved, more and more controls are required, and any breach of those confidentiality will definitely attract professional misconduct. Next, disciplinary case laws. 2009 to 2019, I think they have done a very big exercise. They have summarized all the disciplinary cases with commentary to sections, clauses, to 2 schedules, and incorporated them as a referencer in the Code of Ethics. That's going to, I think, play a huge role in our understanding the Code of Ethics. Right from 2009, what has been happening, last 10 years, what has happened, all the latest case laws included, till 2019, I think you will be interested in reading the latest case laws in 2019. Next, references of amended Chartered Accountants Act. Now, references, wherever the Act has been amended, wherever the regulations have been amended, equally the Code of Ethics will definitely undergo changes. So, corresponding to changes in the Act and regulations, Code of Ethics will get amended. So, there will be cross references. This reference is nothing but cross references to the amendments. New clarifications and decisions of the Council, which is going to come as a commentary, particularly under Section 7. Under Section 7, certain decisions have been given. We are coming to that. New additions to guidelines for management consultancy and other services. I told you the scope of management consultancy and other services is getting extended. New clarifications and changes to soliciting. What are the recent clarifications and changes to soliciting based on the new exemptions and prohibitions? It includes but not limited to listing on aggregator based websites is not permitted. I am sure you know who are aggregators like Paytm, MobiKwik. They are all aggregators. I mean those payment gateway websites where and other websites where data is aggregated, where data is used. Listing in those websites is not permitted for members in practice, even if they do offer listing. You cannot list. Commentary on tenders to include notifications and further developments on tenders. Further elaboration on the purview of minimum fees in tender. I told you, even if the tender is open only to chartered accountants, if the minimum fees is prescribed in the tender, members can respond. But what is the purview of that minimum fees? I think more elaboration is being given. Then directory guidelines is getting revised. Under clause 6, part 1 of first schedule, members in practice are permitted to list their particulars in telephone directories, commercial directories, website directories, and directories like Yellow Pages, Just Dial, Soleka.com. You have so many website directories and other directories where listing is permitted, but these guidelines, directory guidelines, is getting revised. Advertisement guidelines to include website guidelines. I think it already includes. I don't see how different is the revised code on this. This is one point which I am not sure. Advertisement under clause 7, under clauses 6 and 7, advertisement guidelines will include website guidelines, no doubt. But there is no change in this. Affiliation with the network. This is a very important point. A very good relaxation. Affiliation with the network registered with ICAI may be mentioned in an advertisement. All along this was not permitted. Under the network guidelines, under the networking guidelines, mention of the network in any advertisement was not permitted. This is a good relaxation for members who are practicing as a network. So the name of the network can definitely be included in the advertisement. Mention of the network is possible now. Passport style to be, instead of passport size photograph, passport style and passport size, I'm not sure how many of us are clear about it. Here the size doesn't matter, the style is what matters. Next, social networking sites is included in the definition of write-up. This was not there in the write-up guidelines under clause 7, part 1 of first schedule. Advertising through a write-up guidelines did not include social networking guidelines. Not social networking websites. Now this has been included. So you members in practice can include a write-up in social networking websites like Facebook, Twitter, etc. All those websites can now include a write-up. So such advertising through a write-up is permitted. It was not permitted till now. Size of the signboard. I think appropriate visibility, illumination to be additional criteria. I don't know who was serious about it. There is no visibility, there is no illumination. You can't find the name board of a CA firm. So that must have definitely been considered. A little more of relaxation. In fact, there is no guidelines at all in the institute about the size of the name board or how it should be, what should be the length, what should be the breadth. No. There is no such guidelines at all. The only guidelines is there should not be any element of advertising or publicity directly or indirectly. That's all. Now, additional criteria is coming by way of visibility. I think more visibility and illumination is permitted. I don't know to what extent that will still be considered. I'm not sure. You can't put it on the top of the terrace like all commercial, with neon signboards, etc. Visibility from where? From the airlines? Visibility to what extent? How many kilometers visibility? Illumination? Lot of questions need to be answered on that. Next.
One of the big four is displaying in chat.
That is precisely why I came to that point. I don't know how many people are aware. One of the big firms have a very big signboard.
Whether it is permissible?
With, I think now it should be. Visibility and illumination is now permitted. And we are expecting more commentary, explanation, elaboration on that. Additional criteria has come. We are expecting more on that. I don't think that can be permitted to a very big extent. To what extent, we will wait. Next. New valid proof of delivery. Watch this, 18. No more registered post acknowledgement video alone. New proof of delivery, valid proof of delivery is being included. New appendices. Now all this is just an additional appendix with list of accounting standards, auditing standards. Guidelines for corporate form of practice. That's a very important development which is happening under section 25 of the Chartered Accountants Act. Guidelines for corporate form of practice. As of now, members in practice can only be promoters and directors in companies. But corporate form of practice is for the first time being considered. To what guidelines? Subject to guidelines. Everywhere you will find it is subject to guidelines to be issued, subject to guidelines to be issued. Those guidelines are being awaited. Next, notification on UDIN and disciplinary flowcharts. A statutory auditor cannot be the internal auditor, is applicable to all entities and not only under the Companies Act. That's a huge development. That's a very big, restriction now. You cannot be the statutory auditor and internal auditor of partnership firms or other entities where we do have, in many cases, there are cases where we are doing both external and internal audits for various purposes. But now for all entities this has been banned. Further elaboration of definition of director simpliciter. Director simpliciter, who is a director simpliciter? Ordinary director. A director simpliciter is nothing but an ordinary director of a company, not being a managing director or whole-time director. Further elaboration on the definition of director simpliciter. There is a provision in that director simpliciter that even if the member and or his relatives hold substantial interest, the member can be an ordinary director. That is changing now. That is undergoing a change. If substantial interest is held by the member and or his relatives due to corresponding changes even in the Companies Act. In the Companies Act you are aware that a member and or his relatives hold interest in the company, they will have to disclose their interest. They cannot participate in any discussion or voting. So effectively they are not in the management at all. If they do have interests, so they are trying to take away that substantial interest. If substantial interest is held, even ordinary directorship may not be allowed. That is the development which is going to happen. Next, guidelines on HUF for business. If a HUF is carrying on business and members in practice are karta of the HUF, if a member in practice is a karta of a HUF and the HUF is carrying on business, HUF has interest in business, interest in educational institutions, interest in agricultural activities and so on. Prior permission of the council will be required under regulation 190A. So it's getting strict. Family business is getting strict. So if you get prior permission of the council for your HUF to carry on business, your COP will become part-time practice from full-time practice. You cannot perform ATAS function. That is the development which is happening now. So guidelines are being issued for on HUF for business. New services are being included in regulation 192. I told you regulation 192 comes under clause 10. Already for certain services, for certain persons can charge fees as a percentage, liquidator, valuer, fundraising activities, cost optimizations, debt recovery services. Additional services are being considered like investment banking, investment advisory services. There are 3 areas which are being included further. Investment banking, investment advisory services, and in management consultancy and other services, computer related services, and services with regard to public issues. Now fundraising activities actually do not include public issues at all. Fundraising activities is only through banks, financial institutions, because management consultancy and other services, it will come only under management consultancy and other services, not as a fundraising activity, public issues. So if public issues is also brought, if a member is acting as an advisor, member is acting as a registrar to a public issue, if a member is acting as a consultant or is assisting in merchant banking activities of a public issue, fees can be charged as a percentage. So additional areas is being contemplated. New services, revise the situation of conflict of interest under clause 4. Clause 4 deals with independence of auditors. So under clause 4, revise the situation of conflict of interest, particularly with the late developments in the Companies Act. Definition of relative is becoming more and more complicated. That is what they are now. We are going to find that relative is very difficult to remember in different statutes for different purposes. So conflict, there is a conflict not only in the interest, in the definition of relative also. So conflict of interest based council decisions under clause 4. Under clause 9, new compliances for generally accepted audit procedures commentary is coming. Clause 9 part 1 of second schedule. In clause 9 part 1 of second schedule, that clause deals with generally accepted audit procedures. Now generally accepted audit procedures, now recently certain standards have been revised. SA 299 has been revised for joint audit. SA 720 has been revised for audit of other information. So a lot of changes have been happening in auditing standards. Clause 9 will be the clause which will be involved wherever standards on auditing is involved. If any revision to standards on auditing happens, correspondingly clause 9 part 1 of second schedule will be attracted if members do not comply with standards on auditing. This is the clause which specifically deals with standards on auditing. Next, Chapter 4 of Council General Guidelines is being repealed. One good thing which is happening. Chapter 4 of Council General Guidelines was dealing with if a relative of the member holds a substantial interest, the member cannot accept the audit. Now he can. That's a fantastic development. I cannot ask my relatives not to hold substantial interest in the business of my client. And if I can't accept such clients, I doubt with many of, I don't think my practice will flourish. I have no control over my relatives holding interest at all. So, I think that's a good development. Chapter 4 of Council General Guidelines is being repealed. It is being deleted. If a relative of the member holds a substantial interest, now the member can definitely accept. But obviously, see, in the Companies Act, Section 141, subsection 3, clause D of the Companies Act, even if the relative holds in shares up to 1 lakh, up to a face value of rupees 1 lakh, there is no disqualification. So such sort of amendments are expected. Next, so it won't be across the board relaxation. There will be caveats involved in that. Next, other situations of conflict of interest will definitely be there. General changes in chapters 6 and 8, tax audit limits and company audit limits may get revised. We are awaiting that. It's not going to be 60 and 30, it's going to increase. To what extent? I think the coming months will tell us. Another 3 months more is done. Next, under the limit of indebtedness, I told you point number 29, the revised limit is 1 lakh. If it is not in the statute, if the limit is in the statute limit will apply. Other than the statute, the limit of 1 lakh will apply. It is not 10,000 anymore. And before I conclude, there is few more points coming. The objective of the Ethical Standards Board is to align the revised code with the International Ethical Standards Board for accounting. So the terms of everything is being done. And one thing, online transfer of fees of 1,000 rupees is enough to file a complaint for unjustified removal of auditors. And the requirement of filing papers by hand is dispensed now. All you have to take a Google Pay and transfer 1,000 rupees online. And you can file a complaint that you have been removed, your removal is unjustified. For council members, the last highest position held in ICAI as an elected representative can be on the visiting card provided it is not without the ICAI emblem. And the visiting card is of the individual member and not of the firm. Whether he is a partner in that firm or not. So this is a summary of all the developments which is happening in now the revised Part B of the code, revised Part B of the code. I'm sure now this material will get circulated, definitely, and it will also be put up on the website. Now I invite your questions, if any. Yes, please. You wanted to ask me something.
This multiple designation, for instance, CAS Ganapati, Director of Finance, is it permitted?
C.S. Ganapati?
Director of Finance.
Director of Finance, yes. No, if I am in employment, my designation will be determined by my employer. I cannot use my own
They can
designations.
put chartered accountant also, no?
No,
They can't.
no can't.
That is not.
You cannot put Director of Finance and a Chartered Accountant.
Yeah,
No,
oh,
not permitted.
fine.
You can use only one,
Fine.
not both.
Then this separate bank account,
To be
client's money-
deposited,
client's
yes.
money into separate bank account. What does it mean, sir? I should have exclusively for one account for
Client's money.
client's money.
Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
Then
And
quantum.
I think it should be preferably a current account and not an SB account
So
for issues of interest and other things involved. So if you deposit client's money and keep it for a long period of time, it will accumulate interest also. Then it will be like investor education and protection fund. Other issues will start.
The quantum of surplus has to be returned. Even a small sum, 10 rupees, 100 rupees.
Definitely.
Even 1 rupee.
I think that it doesn't make any difference at all.
Okay. Well, what is the reasonable time to return the money, sir?
No, there is no reasonable time to return the money. As soon as possible. I think it's better you don't hold the money, because such monies will get displayed in your balance sheet as a separate bank account.
Display of house cum residence as a company's name. What should
In the firm's name.
can it be?
No, firm's name cannot be displayed at the residence.
But that is office cum residence.
No, if you have office cum residence, is it your individual or sole proprietary?
It's a partnership,
It's a partnership in the residence.
but I am a partner in that.
Ah,
They are using my office, my residence
my
Yeah.
residence.
as my
Two
office.
separate name boards have to be there. One individual, one for the firm. You cannot combine both. Under section 27, only the individual name board of the member can be at the residence. Firm's name board can be there if the residence is being partially used as office. Separate name boards have to be displayed.
So two name boards are.
Definitely. One individual and one for the firm. You cannot combine both.
Sir, the non-residential cannot practice the means.
Yes.
A chartered accountant can practice in Kuwait, in that place,
He can practice under the law of that country,
that land.
but he cannot hold a COP and practice in India residing outside India. Residing outside India, you cannot practice in India.
Oh, even on a shunting basis, not permitted. Oh,
A place of ordinary residence should be in India. 182 days of active involvement in the office is mandatory under section 27.
fine. Certifying KYC details, is it permitted, sir? For instance, account opening for business from current account. See, it is not our business, it is not our profession also. Certifying who is that, he is running a business with Aadhaar number.
Under section 2, subsection 2 of the Chartered Accountants Act, certification of facts or data is permitted. You can certify any fact or data with evidence, including Mr. X is so-and-so is a director of the company. Mr. X is a resident. In fact, we have gone to the extent of so-and-so is the father and son. See,
will the writing of a letter to the bank manager will be equivalent to a certificate?
no, definitely not. A certificate requires 4 things. 1, UDIN has to be generated. 2, attestation with your membership number, firm registration number is required. 3rd, the certification has to be included with your attest function. KYC norms will apply. It is mandatory for attestation. So, as a letter to the bank will never be construed as a certificate. You have to have a certificate number, everything,
Number is
reference
there.
numbers, all those things have to be there.
Not mentioning a number, this ID number, will it tantamount to
UDIN?
this UD?
Yes, yes, it is mandatory under the Unique Debt Authority of India. It is mandatory. It is now generation of UDIN separate guidelines are coming. In fact, you can see in these points also that I have included. The Code of Ethics is now including council guidelines for UDIN also. If non-compliance with those guidelines will attract clause 1, part 2 of second schedule.
Putting the details in LinkedIn or Just Dial, is it tantamount to soliciting? In Just Dial we put the complete details, is permitted now.
Yeah, but no element of publicity involved. For example, you cannot say since practicing since 1986. Such details should not be there.
Date of membership will be there. That
Possible.
will put indirectly.
That is okay. But no element of publicity or unintended, unwarranted publicity or advertisement, no.
Karta of a business, you told that the Karta of a business cannot, he will become a part-time practitioner. If is agricultural is part of is a business? It's a business?
See, one thing we have to be clear. Agriculture activities, having interest in agriculture activities is also interest. Whatever activity you are performing, that is also financial interest is involved. Your own active participation is involved. Ultimately, the background of that issue is, are you in full-time practice or not? For example, I hold a COP and I am full-time engaged in agriculture. Can I be a full-time practicing chartered accountant? No. There are many members who hold COP and still own agriculture lands and then be engaged in agriculture activities full-time. They are only holding a part-time COP, not a full-time COP. You cannot perform at a function. Because that does require prior permission of the council.
Right now or it is coming?
No, it has been coming all along. If a HUF is carrying on any business activity or agriculture, educational, agricultural or business activities, and if a member in practice is the Karta of the HUF, you do require prior permission of the council under Regulation 190.
But individually you can have lands and then do the business.
Definitely,
So
sir.
you are making the Karta to go out of this.
No, you can't.
You can't.
You
can't
can
have-
never,
You
you
won't.
can never make the Karta go out of the HUF.
Yeah, yeah.
Unless the
It is only
HUF
lands.
dissolves. That's a different issue altogether. Yes, please, I'm sorry. Yeah. You can sit down, please.
My question is about a member residing abroad. If the member is residing abroad and is in employment, but can he hold a part-time COP and be a partner in a company?
COP, whether part-time or full-time, cannot be held outside India.
182 days we have.
Under section 4, subsection 1, clause 5 of the CA Act, as and when a member leaves India, he will have to surrender the COP. He cannot continue to hold COP at all.
Part-time COP also?
No, definitely not.
The reason might be anything, in employment or some personal reason.
Yes, please. Yes, please. But under clause 4, part 1 of first schedule, a CA in practice can enter into partnership with such members. They cannot have any COP, but a CA in practice can enter into partnership. That is permitted.
And a mere communication from the incumbent auditor is enough, or you should get an NOC from them?
A mere communication from the incoming auditor is not enough, strictly speaking. Replying, the previous auditor has to reply, otherwise the entire purpose of clause 8 is defeated.
Any time limit for him to reply?
Yes, there is, definitely. If you have a professional duty to communicate as an incoming auditor, he also has a professional duty to reply to your communication.
Or any time limit?
No, definitely not. Imagine, I am in Chulemede and he is in Mylapore, the previous auditor. How long do you think you can wait for the reply?
How long?
Is your guess. It can be a week's time. Not more than that.
That means he should give an NOC.
Yeah, definitely. He should state very clearly whether there is any professional reason or he has no objection. If he states a professional reason, you cannot accept the appointment.
But I understand that NOC is not required as per some court judgment.
No. NOC is mandatory. See, due seriousness is not being given to NOC, but under clause 8, frankly speaking, under clause 8, and no objection from the previous auditor is mandatory to, as per the true spirit of clause 8. But you're right, in certain court judgments they have interpreted in certain specific facts of the case. In those cases, NOC is not mandatory when the previous auditor is no more, or the firm has dissolved, or in some cases the joint, the identity of the previous auditor is not known. In such cases, it was in some of the cases it has been held that NOC is not mandatory. But correctly speaking, no NOC from the previous auditor is definitely mandatory.
Is that NOC specified word is mentioned in the ethics?
No.
Then
What is mentioned in the code of ethics is the outgoing auditor should reply to the communication of the incoming auditor, stating reasons, if any, those professional reasons, if any, for change in the auditor. That is the reply which has to be from the previous auditor. But there is no specific wording, there is no objection. You may be right in one point that the clause does not use the word specifically no objection. But what else will the previous auditor reply then? What do you think, what else will the previous auditor reply except for stating that we have no objection? Is there anything else it can be stated in the reply? I don't know. Frankly speaking, in my opinion, it can only be no objection.
can NOC be withdrawn after giving?
No, definitely not. Once a no objection has been issued, unless there is convincing evidence to prove that the NOC was issued without the knowledge or concurrence of the previous auditor. It may so happen, it has happened in a few cases where the previous auditor was hospitalized, was under medical treatment, and a signature in the reply has been obtained and sent to the incoming auditor. Subsequently, the previous auditor has disputed the fact that he has not given the no objection under free mind. So it could be there could be coercion or undue influence on that. If there is valid reason, convincing reason, withdrawing the no objection in no way will affect the incoming auditor's position. You cannot find the incoming auditor guilty of professional misconduct if the previous auditor withdraws.
And suppose NOC can be given subject to realization checks?
Yes, definitely. NOC can be given subject to. Why? Incoming auditor can even accept the appointment subject to reply of the previous auditor. That is permitted in the case the appointments are made by C&AG. Under clause 8, there is a provision. If the appointment is made by the Controller and Auditor General of India, after communicating with the previous auditor, the incoming auditor can accept the appointment without waiting for the reply of the previous auditor. by giving a conditional acceptance. Definitely allowed.
Sir, in fact, CAG audits is being done on rotation or something like that. In which case, why at all an NOC is required from a previous auditor?
NOC is not required. Frankly speaking, in such cases is where some of the judgments have been in cases where C&AG only has appointed. You cannot insist on the previous auditor giving an NOC. Even in case of bank audits, different branches are there.
No, bank audit is only for 1 year. So what is the question of previous auditors concerned?
Yeah, it is. It is applicable. Frankly speaking, if you are the incoming auditor of that particular branch, before you accept your appointment, it is necessary for you to send the communication to the previous auditor.
But in reality, see, there's a very shortage of time. Just 4 days before the audit, you get that letter.
See, let me tell you frankly, these are cases where you give conditional acceptance. This is the case where you can give conditional acceptances. You cannot wait, I understand. But that doesn't exonerate you or exempt you from the communication.
Conditional acceptance means
Subject to reply of the previous auditor.
to the
Appointing authority. You can communicate your acceptance to the board of directors or to the branch man, whoever you have to communicate. Giving a conditional acceptance subject to the reply of the previous auditor. That is allowed, that is permitted.
29th March bank audit is coming. How we can reply a bank audit to be completed before 12th?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. That is where we give a conditional acceptance.
Then later on he told refusing then?
On what grounds do you think he can refuse? Now, we haven't had any opportunity. If I could also learn from you. We haven't had any such opportunity. We also go for bank audit. We have never had any such, any objections to our appointment, frankly speaking.
But this case, audit is only for 1 year.
Yes.
So automatically he ceases his auditorship.
No, but under clause, see, even for tax audit, even for tax audit, this year you are the tax auditor, next year I am the tax auditor. Should I not communicate?
But tax audit time is there, September 30th.
Time being
Tax
the
audit very tight.
time being the constraint. I agree. Time is the constraint. In bank audits, you get the appointment hardly, just 2 days, 3 days before, and you have to complete it. In a frantic pace, it all goes on. I agree. But if you truly follow clause 8, I think communication is mandatory. Definitely mandatory.
Just for record purpose.
Yes?
But it is generally not practiced.
No, that's what I'm telling you.
Not, I don't
It
think
is, frankly, we do it.
Oh.
We ask the branch manager for the name and address of the previous auditor and we send the communication and there it ends. That's all. We do it. See, ethics is self-regulatory.
Unconditional acceptance.
Yeah. And conditional acceptance. In fact, in many of the cases, branch manager was surprised to receive a conditional acceptance. See, we follow it. Sir, why should you communicate and why you can see? I am interested in complying with the requirements. That's all. In future, if any issue arises, I am not at fault.
I've done that.
Suppose a firm is appointed as a joint auditor, then to whom I have to communicate?
Firm is appointed as a joint auditor and the previous auditor is an individual.
First, yes.
Previous auditor is an individual.
Auditor also is continuing. Now I am a joint as a joint auditor.
Super. Now, if the existing auditor is also continuing as a joint auditor and new auditor has been appointed, frankly speaking, there is no previous auditor at all in such cases. The newly appointed joint auditor officially should communicate with the existing joint auditor before accepting his appointment. See, all joint auditors' appointment is being made separately only. Separate resolutions are passed for appointment of each joint auditor. You cannot have a blanket resolution for appointing all the joint auditors. That is not possible. You have to have separate resolutions for appointment. So when the incoming joint auditor is appointed, and the existing auditor continues to be the joint auditor, the incoming joint auditor, in the true letter and spirit of clause 8, he should communicate.
So member in charge, only one person can be member in charge. So I know few chartered accounts, they'll be a partner in some firm and they'll do a separate proprietorship also.
Yes.
So that will be two different places.
Correct.
So what will be like?
No, you are not allowed to be in charge of two offices, particularly if one office is a proprietary and the other is a partnership. That is not permitted under section 27. The second office should be your own or the firm. You cannot have one of this and one of that.
So if me as proprietary, if I'm in partnership and some other firm, but then in charge is some other person,
Correct.
I can give.
No problem.
No problem.
No problem.
But if the same has
You cannot be in charge of your office as well as the office of the partnership. That is not permitted.
What happens in case of branch?
Even then, you, in any capacity, you cannot be in charge of more than one office.
Same premises, same bill.
Even then, your proprietary office is ground floor, partnership office is first floor. Even then you cannot. Your proprietary head office is ground floor. Your proprietary branch office is first floor. You can. The second office, the first office and second office is of the same member, not proprietary and partnership. No, not allowed. Section 27 is very clear on that.
But member in charge can be a chartered accountant.
Yes.
But it should be like if you have a COP,
Not necessary.
I can appoint a chartered accountant in employment. or-
Yes, you can appoint a chartered accountant, but who should be in full-time employment in that firm, not outside. Either the member should be a partner, or he should be in full-time employment in that firm. He cannot be in employment outside and be in charge of this office. No, not permitted.
Sir, does institute respond for any doubts arise as like an advance ruling?
Yes, yes, till 21st December time was given. Till 21st December time was given for comments in the institute website. It is still open. It is still open. We have sent our comments. Yes, please.
Corporate form of practice, what are the conditions, any guideline, any framework?
We are waiting for the guidelines. It is just mentioned subject to guidelines. The guidelines is expected. Many such guidelines. You see guidelines everywhere. All those guidelines are on the offing. They are all in the pipeline. They are coming.
So what is part-time COP?
Part-time COP is a COP which is held where a member is not entitled to perform a test function. If a member is not entitled to perform a test function, he is in part-time COP. For example, if a member is holding COP and he is simultaneously in employment, whether it is part-time employment or full-time employment, it doesn't matter. Or a member is holding COP and he is also a managing director or whole-time director in a company, that is part-time COP. So under regulation 190A, certain activities when combined with holding of COP will become part-time COP.
So in partnership firm, if one person is misconduct, whole partnership is like.
No, misconduct applies on. I think it's very clear that only the member is deemed to be guilty of. Nowhere in the code of ethics it says audit firm is deemed to be guilty. It's only the member who is deemed to be guilty.
That means the person is going to sign.
Definitely. If the member who is going to accept, the member who is going to sign, the member who has to communicate, the member who has to comply, the member is deemed to be guilty.
So in some partnership firms, what will happen, like audit will be done by one partner and only signing will be done by other partner.
Whoever signs has a responsibility to review the work performed by the other party.
Then what is the meaning of for chartered account?
Sorry?
For the firm I put, then only signing.
Yeah, even then you have to sign in your individual name.
But it is for the firm I am signing.
Yes, you are signing in two capacities. One as an individual and the other as a partner. You cannot sign only as a partner for X, Y, Z
Your membership will be put there.
firm registration number,
And membership.
then your name, then your membership number, then your, that is how it comes. So you are signing in individual capacity as well as a partner. So you cannot escape from individual responsibility at all. Responsibility cannot be delegated. Work can be delegated, but responsibility cannot be delegated. So it is very clear that, see, I can ask you to perform the audit, but I cannot ask you to sign on my behalf. Can I? No. Unless we are partners. One partner can do the audit and another partner can sign. But even then, as you are supposed to review the work performed by the other partners, SA 220, quality control for audit, requires you to review the work performed by other auditors. One auditor cannot sign unless he has reviewed the work performed by the other auditors. That will amount to non-compliance with standards on auditing. Clause 9, I told you clause 9, part 1 of second schedule deals with contravention of standards on auditing. Okay? Any further questions, please?
Non-compliance of CPE hours.
Non-compliance with?
Minimum CPE hours.
Now, you're actually pulling me also into the issue. I think I am still in some deficit with CPE hours, but I have to make it up. But frankly speaking, CPE is a self-regulating mechanism. CPE is not, in fact, CPE guidelines will come under clause 1, part 2 of second schedule. It is one of the requirements of the CA regulations that you have to comply with the CPE requirements. If you don't comply with the CPE requirements, it is a professional misconduct. But till now, the Council of the Institute and the committee which is in charge of the CPE has not taken any serious action or is contemplating of any disciplinary action for non-compliance with the CPE requirements, except that the members have been reprimanded. Reprimanded means cautioned. And if any deficit is there, they have been asked to pay a penalty or fine for that. And if any small hours is missing, they have been asked to comply with that in the next block. It has been added.
And nowadays auditors are disqualified by various agencies like SEBI, RBI, in addition to institute.
Yes.
And recently in PwC case, even Supreme Court, they have said SEBI has got no power
Yes. In fact, PwC, it's a great achievement for PwC to have come out of that. They have escaped from disqualification. They have said SEBI is only a regulator, not an enforcement authority to disqualify. That's a great, that's a big win for PwC, in fact. Yeah, why? Take the case of Deloitte. You have section 140, subsection 5 of the Companies Act. National Company Law Tribunal has passed an order to remove Deloitte in the ILFS case. In the ILFS case, Deloitte and other few firms are facing suspension and disqualification. So these disqualifications, see, under the Chartered Accountants Act, disqualification, that is professional disqualification. These are statutory disqualifications. There is a difference between professional disqualification and statutory disqualification.
So institute is coming under only professional disqualification.
Yes, absolutely correct. For example, if your substantial interest is held and if you cannot accept an audit, is a professional disqualification. You cannot accept more than 60 tax audits, is a professional disqualification. but nowhere in the Companies Act there is any provision there. Even Income Tax Act has no provision for tax audit, limit on tax audits. This is a professional disqualification. Okay? Anything else, please? So, can we conclude the session? And there are three more things which I would like to add. If you have any further doubts on ethical issues, I'm sure you can forward it to the institute. They can also forward it to me. I am willing to answer those. You may not have everything now, or you may not have the time to ask everything now. In future, if you have any such ethical issues on which you would like to have some, clarity and explanation, I'm sure Paramasivan sir will definitely help us on that. You can forward your enquiries or queries. Yes, please. Yes, sir. Yeah, tell me.
Now I say in the case of Deloitte and company, the company will be held responsible. But actually, previously you said that only the auditor signing the report will be of professional misconduct like that. They may rope in other auditors and continue the work as Deloitte and something like that.
No, they can't escape like that. If it is found that other auditors have also been involved in the negligence, equally disciplinary action will be contemplated against them also. You are right, previous auditors have signed and they have left. The incoming auditors get caught. But if the issue is traced back to it is possible that the actual fraud was happening much earlier. In the Satyam case, that's what happened. It was going on for several years. But the unfortunate part of it, the same audit firm continued. Had there been a change in the audit firm, all the audit firms in the earlier years will also face the disciplinary action. Yes, sir.
Just supplementing our sir's doubt clearance, we are very grateful to him that he is volunteering to give that explanations whatever the members are having. We are thankful to you, sir.
Yes.
And in addition to his own volunteering to help you about your ethical dilemmas and the code of conduct doubts, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India is having a website, esb.icai.org. I repeat,
ethicalstandardsboard.icai.org.
In that website, there is a help desk. There is a help. There is a help desk available in that thing. In a lighter vein, that clarification will be more authentic than
very true.
Individual.
No, that comes from the board itself.
Because sir and myself we have to take it in the right direction.
Yes,
that is what,
yes. I think there is no second opinion on that. It is coming. If an opinion comes from the council of the institute, it can never be. It can.
More of a like an advance ruling.
Exactly.
It is like an advance ruling.
Yes, it is. It is.
Sir has mentioned so many sources of do's and don'ts.
Correct.
So many do's, right from first schedule, second schedule, part A, part B, part the thing, section 25, 27. All those things are called as sources
Correct.
of your ethical
Correct.
behavior.
Sources of, yes. Very true.
That esb.ica.org takes into consideration whatever the possible sources to guide you.
Correct.
And then, as you have rightly pointed out, we can take it as an advanced guidance. Based upon this, I have acted upon. This is what, because I thought that I should reduce the burden for SARS.
Definitely. In fact, what I just have one doubt on that particular point. Can that be taken as like an expert opinion? The views expressed by the ESB on that?
See, as far as the sources of ethical standards are concerned, what I feel is, as an officer, what I feel is, there are two aspects involved. If your dilemma is relating to individual, it is relating to individual.
Correct.
institute within these four walls gives an evasive reply. Refer that first schedule, refer that section 25, refer that Code of Ethics 2019 and other things. Because it will not give specific responses. As you have mentioned, expert opinions are binding on these are all technical standards.
Advanced ruling.
Technical standards.
Your answer is
Institute and its officers and its committees will never give. Normally will never give individual specific thing because it will be quoted. It will be quoted. It will never.
Cannot give.
It will simply give refer schedule first class A, class B and other things. Because
only the source can be provided.
With so much of regard to the profession, institute believes that you are having more interpretation skills than an officer sitting in Delhi. Number two, if your query is going to affect the entire profession, believe it will be placed before the ESB opinion will be released, and the ESB is also feeling that the council decision is also required about the issue which one is referring. It will be placed before the council and the council direction will be. And it will go to the extent of amendment of the regulation and part A and part B. That is the methodology the institute is following.
Thank you so much, sir. I think
one small supplement. Sir has listed 32 areas which the part B is concerned. Sir is so confident that all these decisions will be implemented. As of now, they are exposure level.
They are only at the exposure.
Exposure draft stage only. Up to 21st December, the institute has invited comments on all these 50 areas. That the exposure draft itself is running into 126 pages or 130 pages. What sir has identified is gist of the 160 pages. Now,
I have taken only a summary of
yes, sir, because sir is so confident, maybe he is experienced with dealing with the institute, everything will pass through. Like
no, it will not. It will not. I think he has more experience on that.
Indebtedness like 10,000 rupees will be increased to
1 lakh.
It is not will be. He is being considered for revision.
Yes, sir. I fully appreciate
that. Because I thought that I should
get
this one.
In fact, it is more out of expectation.
Because the exposure stage, anything may happen.
Yes,
that 1 lakh rupees may be reduced to 50,000, maybe increased to 2 lakh rupees and other thing. All these issues are exposure.
Only at the exposure.
And all these comments, the institute has invited comments. And
why I felt like that was, if they had indicated it is bound to, I think a higher limit is being considered instead of 1 lakh. By putting 1 lakh as an amount, I think they are serious about putting it. Otherwise, they may say that we are proposing to increase the limit and keep quiet.
Because even just to supplement sir's viewpoint, the council in principle has accepted all of these exposure and the contents. In principle.
Yes.
Further, because we have to win the confidence of the members. We have to take each and every one of you, particularly practicing members, because the new ethics 2019 revolves more on the compliance with the rules and regulations of the land. Because sir was telling, when a company law requirement is there, ethical standards you need not follow, because that is more binding.
Statute overrides the thing.
Yes. So there is a separate class, separate requirements for compliance with the rules and regulations and the acts and compliances of the land. Because international ethical standard is not fit for all, because it is an international ethical standard. It will not deal with individual country specific issues.
Jurisdiction.
Country specific issues are taken care by the part B of this thing. Sir was telling the institute is going to give you another part B separate publication. It is a separate publication.
Volume 1 and volume 2.
So that is what we are contemplating. And yes, sir was telling, the part A has made applicable with effect from 1st April 2020. All goes well, this will also form part of that 1st April 2020. I thought
Thank you
that-
so much.
Thank you.
No, one is last question, sir. Can the business partner, a partner of a business, can he prefer a complaint on the auditor?
Business partner, can he prefer a complaint on the auditor? Yes, definitely. There is a provision in under sections 21 and 22 of the Chartered Accountants Act. A client can also file a complaint against. Yes. To the director, disciplinary directorate. You have to file a complaint with the disciplinary directorate. It is well within their scope.
Even that will be investigated.
Definitely. Once a complaint is received, enquiry has to be conducted. Not even the council has power to withdraw it. The whole process of enquiry has to be conducted. And then only the decisions will be given. So, if someone complains, you cannot say this complaint is useless and drop it. No, you can't. Enquiry will be conducted. Thank you, sir. So nice of you. I take leave from you. I hope you have enjoyed this session.